Okay, how are you? Hello everyone out there on the World Wide Web. Thank you so much for tuning in again to my channel. I want to sort of revisit what we discussed in the previous episode, in episode 8, because I think it was a little rusty, and I don't think I spoke as clearly as I'd like to speak on the topic as I'm going to try to now. So, my outlandish statement for, I don't want to say this is outlandish, but the theme of this episode, excuse me, is the role that the female plays in a economically sound household. The role that she plays, her value, even as a housewife, to the economic empowerment of her family. So I'm just gonna go through this story because, well, to get right into it, there is a very uncomfortable stereotype that says that black people don't read, right? And that's a very big problem. That's a huge problem because, I mean, if we're going to say the man or the establishment, they have tons of information. They've got data and they've got metadata. So data is all the data that they have on when you go to the bathroom, when you pay your taxes, when you buy your Christmas gifts, how you buy your, they've compiled all this data in what they call a database. And then to make matters worse, they have something called metadata, which is the data about the data that they've compiled, right? So information is absolutely essential to their dominance over you and I. And to make matters worse, if the television is not going to give you the information you need to defeat these people, all right? Because make no mistake, you are in a fight. This is a dog fight, right? you're in a fight, and their main weapon against you is information. The information you need to defeat them is not going to be on Housewives of Atlanta or Married to Medicine or the Black Ink Crew. Despite how entertaining those shows might be to some, you're not going to get the information that you need there to compete against these people, the top 1% that control 92% of the world's wealth. All right? You're not going to beat them there. The information that you need to fight them is actually in a book, in your local library, in your bookstore, in the newspaper, the Wall Street Journal. That's where you go to find information to fight these people, okay? And another horrible wisdom or saying that it's the 80-pound gorilla in the room, so let's just get to it. If you want to hide something from black people, the best place to put it is in a book. And lo and behold, that's what I'm selling. That's my main product. So I happen to be black, so this is an exponentially huge problem that I need to address, right? So I'm going to discuss with you, ladies and gentlemen, this evening, how we can change that, all right? So years ago, I was at the height of my ignorance, and I'd got my first job with this guy, Rich Chereskin. He was a sales manager, and I used to go to these interviews, and I'd walk in, and I knew as a black man walking into the interview, as soon as I walk in, I can see this. If there's a white male, I can see his face. I know he's not hiring me. I might as well just get up and walk out. After a while, I got so good at recognizing the racism that I could just I was literally like, give me back my resume. I was never here. Goodbye. All right? Because there's no point going through it. If you're not going to hire me, I'm not going to sit here and play grab ass with you. I'm leaving, right? So I went to this interview, and I was afraid that I was going to run into that again. It was nighttime. It was a really high-tech office. There was lights and computers and everything. I looked like I was in an episode of Star Trek. And I walk into the hiring manager's office. The secretary told me to go sit in his office and wait for him. And lo and behold, I see a big poster of Michael Jordan above his desk. And I was like, boom, I'm getting this job. And I got the job. I actually got the job. I write about it in the book. And I was horrible, right? I was terrible on the job. So I told him a story about when I first started playing baseball and how I was horrible in playing baseball. My wrists were so skinny I couldn't even hold a bat. And then one day I hit a triple, and the next year I came back, I was pitcher, and I took my team to the World Series. And I'm sitting there lecturing him like, yeah. He's like, really, Bintell? So what you're saying is, even though my son is horrible in baseball, I shouldn't give up on him, I should stick it out with him. And I was like, absolutely. Started lecturing Rich. Like, I forgot that I was in an interview, and I started lecturing Rich, and he sat there in he was a really smart guy, and he was like, really? And he let me lecture him, and I got emotionally caught up in it. Well, luckily I gave him that lecture because I was horrible my first job. I was like all the other guys. There was a Chinese guy, and there was a Russian guy, and there was a Spanish guy. Spanish guy, he was tough as nails. His name was Peter Andrews. He played football at Rutgers, and his best friend, Will, and this other Asian guy, they were tough. They were engineers, but they were tough. And Pete would take me out raining, and then he would stomp through to these big companies, and he would walk in there and lecture the CIO and get them to buy a $500,000 computer system just because he said so. It was the toughest. He wrote the T's and C's of our contracts. He wrote them. Peter wrote them, right? He could do anything, and he was younger than me, and I was like, wow, these kids are tough. So I was supposed to go down and meet with the copier reps, and they were supposed to take me out to meet their customers, right? But nobody wanted to take me out. I don't know. I want to say it was because I was black, but I think I was just too aggressive, and I just came at them like, "Hey, take me to see your customers," and they were like, "All right, no, I stopped talking." They just didn't want to have anything to do with me. And I used to come into the office, and they would be like, "Oh, I don't see you," right? And I was like, "Wow, this is horrible," and I was sucking. There was a little white manager, and she was like, "Why aren't you firing Bintell?" I used to hear her say it. And Rich would say, "No, I'm not firing him," because I gave him that lecture about baseball in our interview. He wouldn't let anybody fire me. So one day I was just like, you know what? I'm going to stop being a pain in everybody's behind. And I just walked in, and I was like, "Hey, guys want to go to lunch?" And they looked at me shocked, like, wow, Bintell is not in it for himself. He's actually doing something for us. Right? And that's the whole theory of how to win friends and influence people. Right? If you want somebody to do something for you, you got to show them what's in it for them. Right? And when I finally found out that that was the entire theme of that book, it really struck me, because that's why I was sucking at MCS. I kept positioning myself as, hey, do it for me, do it for me, do it for me, when I should have been positioning myself as, hey, I can do this for you. And if you do that, if you do this for me, this is what I can do for you. And when I took them out to lunch, that was me saying, this is what's in it for you. I will pamper you. I'll take care of you. And it turned on a dime. That day, after that day, I went from being like 20% of quota, about to be fired. I didn't make the first President's Club level trip. I had to sit in the office when everybody went to Puerto Rico. It was horribly embarrassing. And I was the only black guy there, and I was the one that didn't make the trip, so it was disgusting, right? But then here again, if you want to hide something from black people, put it in a book. And that was the mistake that I was making, and it was in the most famous self-help book of all times that I omitted to read, right? So I finally, the secretary, she's like, well, you're their golden boy now, and they're going to take care of you, so just hang on, it's going to be a ride. And that's what it was. They used to call me and like, Bintell, I need a $300,000 printer, mark it up 30%, and give me the quote, and I'll sell it. Shut up, just send me the quote. Bam! Right? And I would make $5,000 off of a call like that, and I got many calls like that. It was just, I couldn't keep up with it. It was so, and I used to get checks for 20. I made after being there for 6 months and not selling anything, in the space of 4 months, I caught up from being 20% of quota to being 150% of quota in like 4 months, which means I hit all my monthly bonuses, my quarterly bonuses, and my commissions every month. Like bing, 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 bing. It was like playing pinball. And I was just getting sick checks. Like I used to go cash them, and they'd be like, is this your yearly bonus? And I'm like, no, it's my check for being stupid, right? So there's one guy, his name was Brian, I forget his name. I think his name was Brian. He was a really nerdy guy, and he was one of the guys that I'd taken out. And he used to talk like this: hey, Bintell, how are you? You know, what's going on? How you doing, Bintell? I hope you're okay. And he would wear a blue suit, white shirt, red tie every day. And he literally walked like he was zero emotion, right? But his customers trusted him, with their lives, because he wouldn't, if you were talking, he was not going to talk. He never offended anybody. He was this kindest, softest guy I'd ever met in my life. And I would come into the office, hey, just flapping off at the mouth, and he would be like, he would laugh at me, let me finish, and then he would be like, come on, I'm taking you to an appointment, let's go, right? And he would just take me to these appointments and literally sold my products for me, right? New Year's Eve of year of 2000, I think it was, I closed the last $100,000 to get me my President's Club level trip, finally, President's Club level 2 trip to Monte Carlo, the south of France. And I won at 12 o'clock, right at the deadline. I was the last one, all because I wouldn't read. But this guy, he was making, lots of money. Sometimes they would make $300,000 a month. I mean, these guys were just pulling down huge checks of like 100 grand. They were literally the entire company. Was this group that I took out to lunch. 70% of the revenue of the company came from them. And I developed a relationship with them. So I was their golden boy, right? So I used to go into their office, and they would have all these books on their desk, all these self-help books, and they'd be like, yeah, my girlfriend bought me that book, and my mom bought me that book, and they coveted these books, right? And they had bookshelves and libraries in their cubicles, in their offices, and I was like, what do you have all these books about? I was like, why are you reading these books? Like, I was just, and I had an engineering degree, but I thought that they were weird because they read these books. One of the guys said that, yeah, my dad, if I don't read that book, my dad's going to be mad at me. I was like, your dad's going to be mad at you for not reading a book? You mean your dad doesn't want to fight you? Because all my buddies, their fathers wanted to beat them up when they became men, right? So we go on this appointment, and he takes me out, and we win the President's Club level trip to Monte Carlo, and we're in the, I thought he was the nerdiest nerd ever. I just thought he was such a nerd. I was like, shut up, man. I was horrible, right? And we're in the airport to take this night flight to Monte Carlo, and I'm excited. I'm with my girlfriend. I'm like, I'm a big shot. I got all this money in my pocket, God knows what I did with it. And we're there, and we're waiting for the plane to take our seats. We're in first class. We're going to Monaco, and I hear a little voice in the back of my head. It says, "I'm gonna F your SHIT up," right? A little squeaky voice. I'm gonna F your, and I'm still talking and doing my thing, right? And he says it over and over, and I turn around, and lo and behold, it's my nerdy friend. It's the guy who I thought was a nerd with all the books in his office. But he wasn't a nerd that night. He looked just like the lunatics that I'd grown up with, that were in and out of jail, that were beating people up and knocking people out and breaking people's jaws. All of my childhood idols that were just monstrous fighters. Like, there were guys in my neighborhood that were little Mike Tysons, and there were guys in my neighborhood that were Tommy Hearns, and they fought each other. They fought blood sport in the street, and I worshiped these guys. This guy, who I thought was a nerd, that night was just like them. He was exactly like them. It's just that his persona was all an act. It was all an act, and everything that he learned, how to manipulate society and fool society into thinking that he was this really trustworthy, nerdy guy, he'd gotten from reading in these books. And I could tell that night that I couldn't beat him. Lo and behold, comes out to find out he was an Olympic wrestler. And he was going to twist me into a pretzel, right? Because he was tired of me talking, he'd endured it, and he was like, we won the President's Club level trip, and now I'm gonna beat Bintell up. And I thought that was, I just thought that was funny. So my point is that he didn't buy these books for himself. His girlfriend bought the books. His mom bought the books. His father bought the books. Later on, I learned, I met this lady who was a marketing director for News Corp, and she did research on who I should sell my book to. Where was the perfect demographic? Who are the people that I should target first? In the world of business, they call it your beachhead. Where are you going to land with your product first, right? And they said that people that go to the gym are 9 times more likely to buy these sorts of books than everyone else, because that's self-improvement. They're actively improving themselves. So those people are really excited about any sort of self-improvement. And they also said that women, housewives, buy these books 98% of the time. Which brings me back to the role of the female in this economic process, her role in the household. And I've learned over the years that these housewives that you see just pushing carriages and with their babies and their big cars that you're jealous of, and you're like, that, whatever, she's lucky, she's got a rich husband, she's behind him. She's the one watching the Oprah Winfrey Show, who was the entire publishing world, by the way. Robert Kiyosaki sold 0 books until he went on Oprah Winfrey's show. All right? Who else sold 0 books? Steve Harvey sold 0 books until he went on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Who do you think is watching the Oprah Winfrey Show? Housewives. So the housewives see that and they say, you know what? That book has information that my husband, who's engaging in warfare at work, because if he sells $1 million worth of equipment this month, next month, if he doesn't sell another $1 million, they're going to look at him to fire him. You're only as good as your last month. And these women know that. So they realize that it's in their best interest to arm their husband, their stallion, with the most technologically up-to-date business technology information on the market. And that's what they do. I can't tell you how many women, housewives, have met me and basically hustled me out of a book to give to their husband because they feel like this is something that their husband needs to know. Because they don't want to work, right? They don't want to go out and do it. So if they're going to be bestowed the pleasure of staying home and taking care of their kids, which not to call me old-fashioned, but I think families work better when women stay home and take care of the kids, and when men make the lion's share of the money, when men are the breadwinners. I mean, statistically, I just think that's the way it works best that way. I'm not a sexist. There are some incredible female executives. The CEO of Xerox was a black female. I mean, there's tons of incredible female executives that are mentally just as capable of creating, innovating, and finding new markets to open up than any man. But as far as tradition is concerned, historically, over the history of civilization, I believe that things work best from a societal perspective, statistically, when it's set up that way. And my point is that when a woman is staying home and not working, quote unquote, it's not that she is not deserving of that. It's not that she is not contributing to the household because of that reason. While he's working, she's looking for information to support him so he can be successful. All right? Now, they also say that that's my thesis. For this very reason, there's a wisdom that says if you educate a female, you uplift a race. All right? And not to be fresh and not to be provocative, but I can tell you that men, which I happen to be, will do exactly what they need to gain the sexual favors of a woman and no more. So if a woman says, listen, you're going to have to read the Wall Street Journal every day, and she sets the standard for what he has to do to achieve an emotional and a sexual and a romantic relationship with her, he will do it. But if her standards are very low, if she's like, you don't have to read anything, and you don't have to go to college, and you don't have to start your own business, and you don't have to make $1 million a year to support us, he won't. He just won't. All right? Now, there is a problem in the black community right now. Black women have 0 respect for black men right now. 0. There's a whole conversation going on right now that I can do bad by myself, and weird black women are the ones that are picking up the slack for the black household, and black men are going to jail at exponential rate. Well, black men are going to jail because they're selling drugs and doing illegal activity to support you so you can go out and buy Fendi and Gucci and Prada. All right, that's why black men are going to jail. thank you very much. All right, just want to make that clear. All right, so